What if I told you there was a footballer who reached such perfection that he literally couldn't miss when it mattered most? A player who transformed from a skinny, showboating teenager into an unstoppable goal-scoring machine through pure obsession and relentless work? This is the story of how Cristiano Ronaldo became physically incapable of missing a shot. But this isn't just a tale of natural talent. It's a masterclass in what happens when raw ability meets unbreakable determination, when a young man decides that being good isn't enough, that being great isn't enough, and that only absolute perfection will satisfy his burning hunger for greatness. Summer 2003. Picture this scene. An 18-year-old Portuguese wonderkid steps onto Old Trafford for the first time, his heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. The theater of dreams has witnessed countless legends, but on this particular day, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Alex Ferguson, the legendary Scottish manager who had seen everything the game had to offer, had just witnessed something that would change Manchester United forever. A teenager who left seasoned United players absolutely stunned in what should have been a routine-friendly match. The boy's name was Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro, and he had just produced a performance so electrifying, so mesmerizing, that Ferguson turned to his coaching staff and made one of the most prophetic statements in football history. "We're not going home without that boy." But what happened next would test everything this young player believed about himself, challenge every assumption he had about his abilities, and ultimately forge him into something the world had never seen before. Ferguson didn't waste time. Within days, Manchester United had shattered their transfer record for a teenager, paying Sporting Lisbon £12 million for a player who had barely made a dozen senior appearances. They slapped the legendary number 7 shirt on his back, the same number worn by George Best, Brian Robson, Eric Cantona, and David Beckham. The weight of expectation was immense, but nobody could have predicted the journey that lay ahead. Ronaldo's first season was a brutal reality check that would have destroyed lesser men. The Premier League wasn't the technical, flowing football he was accustomed to in Portugal. This was a different beast entirely. A league where physical defenders had no patience for his Portuguese flair, where veterans twice his age saw his tricks as disrespectful showboating that needed to be stopped at all costs. They bullied him mercilessly, kicked him when referees weren't looking, and showed him that skill alone wasn't enough to survive in the most competitive league in the world. The statistics tell only part of the story: 6 goals and 8 assists across 40 games in all competitions. Respectable numbers for any teenager, but nowhere near the standards Ronaldo had set for himself. The media, never kind to foreign players struggling to adapt, called him a show pony, a selfish player with no end product, a pretty footballer who couldn't deliver when it mattered. The criticism cut deep, but it was nothing compared to what was happening behind closed doors at Manchester United's training ground. Even his own teammates, players who should have been supporting and nurturing the young talent, grew increasingly frustrated with his selfishness on the ball. Gary Neville, the club captain and a man known for his patience with young players, later admitted he almost gave up on the youngster entirely. The endless step-overs, the unnecessary tricks when a simple pass would suffice, the apparent disregard for team tactics, it all seemed to suggest that Ronaldo cared more about his personal highlights reel than the team's success. Ryan Giggs, perhaps United's greatest ever winger and a man who understood the pressures of being young and talented, revealed years later that senior players used to deliberately kick Ronaldo in training sessions whenever he started showboating. It wasn't malicious. It was their way of teaching him that the beautiful game could be brutally ugly when you least expected it. "We were trying to toughen him up," Giggs explained, "to show him that he couldn't rely on tricks alone." The young Portuguese was at a crossroads. He could either adapt and evolve, or he could become another cautionary tale of unfulfilled potential. Many talented youngsters had arrived in the Premier League with great fanfare only to disappear into obscurity when the reality of English football proved too demanding. The pressure was building, the criticism was mounting, and then, in September 2005, Ronaldo's world completely collapsed. The news came like a thunderbolt. His father, Denis Aveiro, had passed away from liver and kidney failure at the age of just 52. The man who had introduced young Cristiano to football, who had worked as a kitman at local club Andorinha to make the work that would determine whether he became a footnote or a legend, was just beginning. The transformation started with his body. Ronaldo embarked on a fitness regime that was unprecedented for a footballer of his era. While his teammates were going home after training, he was just getting started. Hours of resistance training, weightlifting sessions that would make professional bodybuilders wince, and a dedication to physical perfection that bordered on obsession. His shoulders began to broaden, his chest expanded, his legs became pillars of muscle and power. But the physical transformation was just the beginning of something much more profound. Every aspect of his lifestyle came under scrutiny and was methodically improved. His diet became a science experiment in optimal nutrition. Gone were the days of eating whatever he wanted. Every meal was calculated, every nutrient measured, every calorie accounted for. Sleep became a tactical weapon, with Ronaldo ensuring he got exactly the right amount of rest to optimize recovery and performance. Recovery protocols that were considered cutting edge at the time became routine parts of his daily schedule. But perhaps most importantly, Ronaldo's mindset began to shift. The ego that had frustrated teammates was slowly being replaced by something far more dangerous, an unshakable belief that he could become not just good, not just great, but perfect. Every criticism became fuel for the fire, every setback became motivation to work harder, every doubt became a challenge to be overcome through sheer force of will. The 2006 to 2007 season was when the world began to see glimpses of what Ronaldo was becoming. 23 goals and 14 assists across 53 matches, numbers that represented a quantum leap from his previous performances. Manchester United won the Premier League title, and suddenly the media narrative began to change. The show pony was becoming a thoroughbred racehorse. The selfish teenager was evolving into a match winner. But the statistics, impressive as they were, didn't tell the full story of Ronaldo's transformation. His 37 goal contributions in 53 games represented more than just improved numbers. They represented a fundamental shift in how he approached the game. The unnecessary tricks were being replaced by decisive actions, the showboating was giving way to clinical finishing, and the individual brilliance was being channeled into team success. Yet even as the plaudits rolled in and United fans began to chant his name with genuine affection rather than frustrated hope, Ronaldo wasn't satisfied. Most players would have celebrated reaching world-class level at the age of 22, would have been content with being called one of the best young players in the world. Not Ronaldo. He had tasted success and found it wanting. He wanted more, much more. The stories from this period paint a picture of a man possessed. A teammate later recalled training sessions that seemed to go on forever because Ronaldo simply refused to stop. I said, "Cristiano, we just finished training." He said, "Let's go play two-touch in the garden, then swimming, then sauna." I was like, "Cristiano, why?" He was obsessed. While we were thinking about going home to our families, having dinner, watching TV, he was thinking about the next opportunity to improve. This obsession extended to every aspect of his game. Free kicks were practiced until his foot was bruised and bleeding. Headers were repeated thousands of times until the timing became instinctive. Sprint sessions continued long after his teammates had gone home, each one measured and timed, each one an attempt to shave milliseconds off his personal best. The young man who had once been criticized for being too individualistic was now the ultimate team player. Not because he had learned to pass more, but because he had made himself so good that his individual brilliance served the team's interests perfectly. The 2007 to 2008 season was when Ronaldo rewrote the rules of what was possible for a winner in the modern game. Under the guidance of coach René Meulenstein, a tactical genius who understood both Ronaldo's strengths and his remaining weaknesses, he learned perhaps the most crucial lesson of his career. "Stop trying to score beautiful goals," Meulenstein told him during one particularly intensive coaching session. "Start scoring every type of goal, ugly ones, tap-ins, headers, deflections, rebounds. Be clinical, not just skillful." This advice would prove to be transformational. Ronaldo began to study the art of goal scoring with the same intensity that a medical student studies anatomy. He analyzed the movement patterns of legendary strikers, broke down the positioning of the greatest goal scorers in history, and practiced finishing techniques that most wingers never even considered. His natural right foot became a precision instrument, but he also developed his left foot to the point where defenders could never be sure which way he would go. The results of this methodical approach to improvement were nothing short of legendary. 42 goals in 49 matches, a ratio of nearly 1 goal per game that was almost unheard of for a player in his position. These weren't just tap-ins or penalties either. They were goals of every conceivable variety. Thunderous shots from outside the box, delicate chips over advancing goalkeepers, towering headers that seemed to defy gravity, clinical finishes in the tightest of spaces. Manchester United swept all before them that season, winning both the Premier League title and the Champions League trophy in what many consider to be Sir Alex Ferguson's greatest achievement. But it was Ronaldo who provided the stardust, the moments of individual brilliance that elevated good team performances into legendary ones. In the Champions League final against Chelsea, it was Ronaldo who gave United the early lead with a header that showcased his incredible leap and timing. The penalty shootout that followed provided one of those moments that revealed Ronaldo's humanity beneath the growing legend. He missed his penalty, skying it over the crossbar in a moment of high pressure that would have haunted lesser players for years to come. But even in that moment of failure, there was something remarkable about his reaction. No excuses, no blame for others, just a steely determination to ensure that such a moment would never happen again. When John Terry slipped and missed the penalty that would have won Chelsea the trophy, Ronaldo's relief was palpable, but it was quickly replaced by something more significant, a hunger to ensure that he would never again be in a position where his team's success depended on someone else's failure. This Champions League triumph was sweet, but it was also incomplete in his mind because he hadn't been the decisive factor in the final moment. The individual awards that followed were a testament to how completely Ronaldo had transformed himself. The Ballon d'Or, FIFA World Player of the Year, Premier League Golden Boot, European Golden Shoe, each trophy represented years of sacrifice, months of preparation, and countless hours of practice that nobody else saw. But for Ronaldo, these awards were not endpoints. They were merely validation that he was on the right path towards something even greater. When the 2008 to 2009 season began, there were whispers that Ronaldo might be tempted by a move to Real Madrid, the club he had dreamed of joining since childhood. The Spanish giants were assembling a galaxy of stars and were prepared to pay whatever it took to land the world's best player. But Ferguson, with the wisdom of a master manipulator, convinced Ronaldo to stay for one more season by appealing to his competitive nature and his desire to cement his legacy in English football. That final season at Manchester United was a masterclass in sustained excellence. 26 goals across all competitions might seem modest compared to his previous season's tally, but context is everything. Opposing teams had spent the entire summer figuring out ways to stop him, deploying double and triple teams, tactical fouls, and every defensive strategy in the book. Yet Ronaldo still found ways to influence games, still provided moments of magic that decided crucial matches. More importantly, that season saw Manchester United win their 11th Premier League title and become the first team in the modern era to win 3 consecutive championships. For Ronaldo, this achievement was particularly sweet because it proved that his individual brilliance could translate into sustained team success. He wasn't just a moments player or a highlights reel, he was a winner, a player who elevated everyone around him. But even as United fans celebrated their historic achievement, there was a sense of inevitability about what was coming next. Real Madrid's pursuit had become relentless, and their offer, a world record 94 million euros, was impossible for United to refuse, especially when the player himself had made it clear that joining Los Blancos had been his childhood dream. The move to Real Madrid in 2009 represented the beginning of a new chapter, but also the ultimate test of everything Ronaldo had learned about himself during his time in England. The pressure was immense and multi-layered. He was the most expensive player in football history, carrying the weight of expectation that comes with such a price tag. He was joining a club in crisis, one that had watched their greatest rivals Barcelona assemble one of the greatest teams in football history and win a historic treble just months before his arrival. Real Madrid's fans, accustomed to Galactico signings who promised much but delivered little in terms of trophies, were initially skeptical. They had seen David Beckham arrive with great fanfare only to become more of a marketing phenomenon than a decisive player. They had witnessed the likes of Kaká struggle to adapt to the intensity of Spanish football. Would Ronaldo be different, or would he become another expensive disappointment? The Bernabeu faithful didn't have to wait long for their answer. Ronaldo's adaptation to Spanish football was remarkably smooth, perhaps because his physical transformation in England had prepared him for any challenge. His first season produced 33 goals and 13 assists across all competitions, numbers that would represent career seasons for most players, but which Ronaldo himself viewed as merely a foundation to build upon. But individual statistics, impressive as they were, couldn't mask the fact that Real Madrid still finished second to Barcelona in La Liga and were eliminated from the Champions League in the round of 16. For a player who had grown accustomed to winning major trophies, this was a painful reminder that football remained a team sport, no matter how brilliant any individual might be. It was during this period of relative disappointment that Ronaldo first became fully aware of the challenge that would define the rest of his career. Lionel Messi, the diminutive Argentine genius who was orchestrating Barcelona's dominance, represented everything that Ronaldo was not. Natural where Ronaldo was manufactured, instinctive where Ronaldo was methodical, effortless where Ronaldo was relentless. Yet their effectiveness was remarkably similar, their goal tallies comparable, their impact on their respective teams equally profound. The media, always eager for a narrative that would capture public imagination, began to frame the rivalry between Ronaldo and Messi as the defining storyline of modern football. El Clasico matches between Real Madrid and Barcelona became must-watch events not just because of the club's historical enmity, but because they provided a direct comparison between two completely different approaches to achieving the same end result: football perfection. For Ronaldo, this rivalry became the ultimate motivation. It wasn't enough to be great anymore. He had to be greater than Messi. It wasn't enough to score spectacular goals. He had to score more goals than Messi. It wasn't enough to win trophies. He had to win more trophies than Messi. The Argentine's very existence became a challenge that consumed Ronaldo's every waking moment. The 2010 to 2011 season saw Ronaldo push himself to previously unimaginable levels. 53 goals in 54 matches, numbers that seemed to belong in a video game rather than real life. He was scoring from every conceivable angle and distance, with both feet and his head, from free kicks and penalties, in the box and from 30 yards out. His conversion rate was becoming supernatural, his ability to find the net in the most unlikely circumstances bordering on the mystical. Yet, even this incredible individual performance wasn't enough to deliver the trophies that Real Madrid and their fans craved. Barcelona remained superior as a team, their tiki-taka style of play proving almost impossible to counter consistently. The psychological toll of individual brilliance failing to translate into collective success was enormous. But Ronaldo's response was predictably extreme. He simply worked even harder. The transformation of his training regime during this period was remarkable, even by his own extreme standards. Recovery sessions became longer and more intensive. Tactical preparation became obsessively detailed. Physical conditioning reached levels that sports scientists had previously thought impossible to sustain. Ronaldo was essentially turning himself into a footballing cyborg, optimizing every aspect of his performance through scientific methods and sheer force of will. Finally, in the 2011 to 2012 season, all the pieces fell into place. 60 goals across all competitions, a tally that seemed to belong to a different sport entirely. Real Madrid's earth-shattering 100 points in La Liga represented not just a championship, but a complete demolition of Barcelona's psychological dominance. The Catalans, despite having arguably their greatest ever team, could only manage 91 points, an incredible total in any other season, but 9 points short of Real's perfection. Ronaldo's contribution to this historic achievement went far beyond mere statistics. His 38 goals in 38 La Liga matches included crucial winners against Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and other title rivals. He scored in big games when the pressure was highest, delivered in moments when the team needed him most, and demonstrated a level of clutch performance that separated true legends from merely excellent players. But even as Real Madrid celebrated their first La Liga title in 4 years, Ronaldo's focus had already shifted to an even greater prize. The Champions League, Europe's premier club competition, had become his obsession. This was the tournament where legends were made, where individual brilliance could most directly impact team success, where his rivalry with Messi played out on the biggest possible stage. The 2012 to 2013 season brought disappointment despite another phenomenal individual campaign. 55 goals across all competitions would have been a career-defining season for any other player, but for Ronaldo it represented failure because Real Madrid won nothing of significance. They finished 15 points behind Barcelona in La Liga and were eliminated by Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League semi-finals. The summer of 2013 brought yet another tactical shift as Carlo Ancelotti replaced José Mourinho as Real Madrid's coach. Where Mourinho had been defensive-minded and cautious, Ancelotti embraced attacking football and gave Ronaldo the freedom to roam across the entire width of the pitch. The formation of the famous BBC front three, Benzema, Bale, and Cristiano, created an attacking unit that was simply unstoppable when they hit their stride. What followed was the most devastating individual season in Champions League history. Ronaldo scored 17 goals in just 11 matches, a ratio that defied belief and remains a record that may never be broken. But it wasn't just the quantity of goals that was remarkable, it was their quality and timing. Crucial strikes against Schalke, Borussia Dortmund, and Bayern Munich in the knockout rounds showcased a player who had reached a level of performance that seemed almost supernatural. The final against Atletico Madrid provided the perfect stage for Ronaldo to cement his legacy as Mr. Champions League. With Real trailing 1-0 deep into the second half and their dreams of La Decima slipping away, it was Ronaldo who stepped up to score the equalizer that took the game to extra time. His celebration, that iconic roar of determination and relief, became one of the most memorable images in Champions League history. When Gareth Bale, Marcelo, and Ronaldo himself scored in extra time to give Real a 4-1 victory, the emotional release was overwhelming. For Ronaldo personally, this triumph validated everything he had worked towards since arriving in Madrid. He had finally delivered the trophy that Real Madrid fans had been craving for 12 years, and he had done it by producing the greatest individual Champions League campaign of all time. But this was just the beginning of Ronaldo's European dominance. The 2014 to 2015 season saw him score 61 goals in 54 matches, establishing new benchmarks for what was possible from an individual player. His hat trick against Granada, where he scored 5 goals in a single match, showcased the clinical finishing that had become his trademark. Every shot seemed destined for the net, every opportunity converted with ruthless efficiency. The pattern was becoming clear. In the biggest games, in the most pressurized moments, when Real Madrid needed someone to produce magic, Ronaldo was delivering with metronomic consistency. Against Granada, 5 shots on target became 5 goals. Against Espanyol, every attempt found its mark. Against Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League, he was quite literally unable to miss. These weren't flukes or lucky streaks, they were the result of thousands of hours of practice, of a player who had trained his muscle memory to the point where scoring had become as natural as breathing. Ronaldo had achieved something that many had thought impossible. He had turned goal scoring from an art into a science, from inspiration into inevitability. The 2015 to 2016 season marked another milestone as Ronaldo surpassed Raúl González as Real Madrid's all-time leading scorer. The symbolism was profound. He had overtaken a club legend, a player who had scored 323 goals in 741 matches in just 310 appearances. The efficiency was staggering, the consistency unprecedented. But individual records, meaningful as they were, paled in comparison to what was coming next. Under Zinedine Zidane's management, Real Madrid embarked on a Champions League run that would cement their place in football history and establish Ronaldo as the greatest player in the competition's long and storied history. 3 consecutive Champions League titles between 2016 and 2018 represented an achievement that had seemed impossible in the modern era. The competition had become so competitive, the margins so fine, that even the greatest teams struggled to win it once, let alone 3 times in a row. Yet Real Madrid, inspired by Ronaldo's otherworldly performances, made it look almost routine. The statistics from this period read like a fantasy novel. Back-to-back hat tricks against Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid in consecutive knockout rounds, an achievement no player had ever managed in Champions League history. Crucial goals in every stage of the competition, match-winning performances when the pressure was at its highest, a level of clutch performance that transcended sport and entered the realm of mythology. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Ronaldo's Champions League dominance was how predictable it had become. When Real Madrid needed a goal, when they were trailing and facing elimination, when everything seemed lost, somehow Ronaldo would find a way. It wasn't luck or coincidence, it was the inevitable result of a player who had trained himself to perform at his highest level precisely when it mattered most. The overhead kick against Juventus in the 2018 quarterfinal became the perfect encapsulation of Ronaldo's evolution. The technique was flawless, the timing perfect, the degree of difficulty almost impossible. But what made the goal truly special was the context. Real Madrid were struggling in the tie, Juventus had taken the lead, and their Champions League dominance was under serious threat. Lesser players would have panicked or tried too hard. Ronaldo simply produced one of the greatest goals in the competition's history. Even after leaving Real Madrid for Juventus in 2018, the magic continued in the most dramatic fashion possible. The second leg of the round of 16 against Atletico Madrid in March 2019 provided one final reminder of why Ronaldo had earned his reputation as the player who couldn't miss when it mattered most. Trailing 2-0 from the first leg, Juventus faced an almost impossible task. Atletico Madrid were masters of defensive football. Their Wanda Metropolitano Stadium was a fortress, and their fans were confident that they had finally found a way to stop the man who had tormented them for so many years. They taunted him throughout the match, jeering every touch, celebrating every defensive intervention. Big mistake, very big mistake. What followed was perhaps the most complete individual performance under pressure in Champions League history. Goal 1, a header that showcased his incredible leap and timing. Goal 2, a clinical finish that demonstrated his composure in the box. Goal 3, a penalty that he dispatched with the confidence of a man who had never doubted the outcome. As Ronaldo celebrated his hat trick, his gesture to the Atletico fans, holding up 5 fingers to represent his 5 Champions League titles, became an instant classic. It was the perfect encapsulation of a player who had transformed himself from a talented teenager into a player who physically could not miss when history was watching. The broader impact of Ronaldo's career extends far beyond statistics and trophies. He proved that the human body and mind could be optimized to levels previously thought impossible. His training methods, dietary protocols, and recovery techniques became the gold standard for professional athletes in every sport. His longevity, maintaining peak performance well into his 30s, challenged every assumption about athletic decline and aging. More profoundly, Ronaldo's story became a masterclass in the power of obsessive dedication. In an era where natural talent is often seen as sufficient, where young players are told they're special before they've achieved anything significant, Ronaldo's relentless pursuit of improvement stood as a counter-narrative to the idea that greatness comes easily. His rivalry with Lionel Messi, which defined football for more than a decade, provided the perfect illustration of 2 completely different paths to the same destination. Where Messi was the natural genius who made the impossible look effortless, Ronaldo was the manufactured perfectionist who made the effortless look inevitable through sheer force of will. The numbers tell only part of the story, but they are staggering nonetheless. Over 800 career goals, 5 Ballon d'Or awards, 5 Champions League titles, 7 league titles across 3 different countries, European Championship and Nations League victories with Portugal, individual scoring records that may never be broken. But perhaps the most remarkable statistic of all is the one that gives this story its title. In multiple documented games throughout his career, Ronaldo achieved a 100% conversion rate on shots on target. Not 90%, not 95%, but 100%. Every shot that troubled the goalkeeper found the back of the net. It was as if in those moments he had transcended the normal limitations of sport and achieved something approaching perfection. As Ronaldo himself said in one of his most revealing interviews, "Talent without work is nothing. Everyone wants to be Cristiano, but few are willing to do what it takes. It's not about the natural ability you're born with. It's about what you do with that ability every single day for years and years, until you become something different, something more than human." He didn't just become one of the greatest players in football history. He became proof that with enough obsession, dedication, and mental strength, any human being can achieve what others consider impossible. He became the player who physically could not miss, not through magic or luck, but through the most systematic and relentless pursuit of perfection that sport has ever witnessed. What's your impossible dream? What would you achieve if you trained with Ronaldo's obsession, if you approached your goals with his methodical intensity, if you refused to accept anything less than perfection? The answer might surprise you. Because Ronaldo's greatest achievement wasn't becoming the best footballer in the world. It was proving that the limits we accept for ourselves are often just starting points for what's actually possible. Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of human achievement that redefine what we think is possible.